Shahid. I'm a senior platform architect with Aura here in New Zealand, and we're hiring. You'd be surprised to hear, or not. Over to you, Will.
Hey everyone, I'm a software engineer working for Datacom. We are also hiring as well, and also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Also, we have got Timur today, who's going to be speaking to us about static web apps. And I think this is Timur's first time, so this is like a really good opportunity to invite any of the other attendees, if you would like to talk at the user group. We would love to hear from you, and we're quite happy to help you get set up and do your first presentation. So please feel free to reach out if that's something that appeals to you. We do have some swag from Microsoft. We've got some Azure passes to give away, and we've decided basically if you ask Timur a question in the chat or whatever, we will send you an Azure pass. So there's a nice big incentive. So our code of conduct, as usual, is just really be nice and be, cooperative, and we work together. If everyone just mutes their mic, and then if you've got a question, put your hand up, and then we'll ask you to come off mute if we need to discuss it further. We will be watching, and Timur will let us know every now and then if he's happy to take a question, or he'll just look at the chat, whichever works for you guys. Yeah, that's basically it. So I think, Dan, if you started the recording, yeah. So Timur, just over to you.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Rory. I'll probably take a few seconds to set up my black screen, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, I think kind of off the back of that incentive that you spoke about, I would really love us to reserve a couple of credit passes for people who helped me get through the demo. I feel I might need help. So if you see I'm stuck and you have a suggestion, please feel free to reach out. Right, where's the button? There it is. I am hoping a black box has popped up. With a nice button. Cool, awesome. Right, hey, fellow engineers. I am a cloud solution architect at Leven, and we are also hiring. I actually come from a heavily software development background. I've been doing software development for quite some time, and one of the things I have grown to like is helping developers overcome technical challenges. One thing, well, a few things I do enjoy is a puzzle, helping other people solve their technical challenges, and a glass of wine. Ideally, we do it all at the same time, but since we're in lockdown, I couldn't really stock up, so we'll have to use water. And even though this is supposed to be a technical presentation, I kind of wanted to start with a bit of a fairy tale, if that's all right. I just try to figure out how to best line that up. Hang on, give me a second. Yes. This is my friend Tyler. His face is actually taken from this person does not exist, but we'll call him Tyler for now. We met for coffee a couple of days ago, and among other things, he told me how he's building this new website. A place where parents can exchange their mailing addresses so their kids can be pen pals. That's joys of being a parent of a kid in a lockdown where you cannot really communicate in person, so you go post. Everyone wins, right? Obviously, having minors exchange any type of personally identifying information is tricky, so the service would ultimately act as a proxy. You will get a PO box for incoming letters, then the contents would be screened so nothing inappropriate slips through, and finally, it will be forwarded to respective recipients. Think like man in the middle, but for snail mail. which is probably once is a good thing. Obviously, he couldn't come up with the whole thing all at once. So for the MVP, he was just happy to let everyone exchange addresses and slap some security later. So this is probably what it should have looked like if we were to implement that sort of thing. So I know that Tyler is extremely bright developer. We worked together briefly. He knows his way around ASP.NET and did some stuff on the front end. When it comes to DevOps, however, he's a bit of a fossil. At work, he would code it up and just check the package over the fence for ops to take care of everything else. So when I casually wondered if he's going to host a website at home, he said he teamed up with another friend, Cam, who is very good with systems administration. So he'll probably take care of the Linux hosting and whatnot side of things. Then I asked if they needed someone to maybe cover PR and business development for them, because that's what I don't know how to do, but really want to learn. But he told me that my services would not be required. And you know what? That kind of pissed me off a little bit. Well, a lot, to be honest, because I really liked the idea. And I thought this may well be the first New Zealand-made unicorn. I looked it up. Apparently, we have no unicorns so far. But apparently, I was not getting my fair share of this venture. So I tried to not show my disappointment, finished off my coffee, and we parted ways. Guess what I was going to do next? I was really determined to stick it back to these people. I knew the idea was solid, so all I needed was to launch the service faster than my competitors. I'm neither great at coding, nor I'm particularly good with DevOps and the servers. Never seen them, never used them. Cloud, never heard of it. So the challenge was going to be very tough. But I think I had one ace up my sleeve that I knew would help me pull it off. And this is where we are going to build a service called Postcard Exchange. And along the way, have a quick tour about Azure Static Web Apps. So this leads our story to the present day. I decided to build my own service with board games and cheerleaders, as you might have seen in the previous slide, using the power of Azure. I'll do that. And here are some things that I see as constraints and considerations that I have to work with. So the first thing is really focusing on the functionality. To make sure that I'm keeping 100% of my unicorn's equity, I will be working alone. Can't really have anyone share that. And that also means I don't have time and skills to dedicate to non-mission critical tasks. I kind of keep talking about unicorns, so this thing probably has to scale like one, because after all, if it goes big, it has to work. Another thing is, since I am a bit old-fashioned, and mostly because I can, I will stick to SQL, because that's what I know, that's what I do, and I'm not quite ready to go any other fancy NoSQL option just yet. Another thing is what I call clean desk policy, which is really my OCD, that kind of dictates me that I should keep my dev environments to as clean of a state as possible and not install too many things. I can't be bothered removing them later on, and even if I do, they probably still leave some nasty residue on the system. I also am lazy. I don't really like installing things. And obviously, since, as I said, we are dealing with pretty sensitive and touchy subject, security is probably a good thing. And finally, I would really love to leverage what I know. And as you might have already guessed, I don't know a lot. Well, some HTML here and there, jQuery, if I'm really lucky, a bit of C#, like a little tiny bit of C#, not too much. So with all these constraints in mind, I found that Azure Static Websites would actually tick all the boxes. It's a relatively new offering. I think it's been introduced maybe May this year, that basically lets you host static assets. I actually have a slide for this. So it lets you host static assets as a bunch of files. It also allows you to spin up functions that serve API requests. It takes care of all the cross-origin requests, policies, and things like that. It comes in with built-in authentication, which we probably will have a look at, but I haven't really had a good demo of that. But we'll see if we can pull that off anyway. And it kind of forces you into best DevOps practices, and you will see what I mean in a second. It also comes with a pre-built Visual Studio Code dev container, which for me means I have pretty much nothing to install. It just is going to work. And with all this in mind, I only have one more picture that I want to show you, which is my artistic interpretation of the official documentation that I found on Microsoft's website, but I thought I can't really stick it in here, so I'll draw my own, which is essentially what's going to happen. You push some code into a repository, and the claims are GitHub and Azure DevOps are all supported, and all 100% perfectly fine choices. Then a pipeline, in case of GitHub, it actually is all automated. The pipeline would kick in and deploy static content and the functions and kind of tie it all together nicely for you, present you with a URL that you can later on share with the world. With that, let's try and build one. I am going to jump onto my VM. Is it still on? Can someone do a thumbs up or something? I think it is. Cool. So to kind of talk about the environment, all I have installed in here is VS Code, Docker. I can't really live without it, so I feel like it's not really an issue. I created some resources on the portal, so I don't spend time doing it now, but it's basically just a database and a couple of pre-canned static websites, so we don't wait too long for development. And we'll probably start by just building one locally and kind of getting a feel of how the local development tooling would work for us. So with that, let's fire off VS Code. And let's open up a folder. This one. And I believe we don't have to install anything, but we'll see in a second. Ah, nice. So literally, pretty much from the beginning, we have to start by adding our development container files, which Visual Studio can actually kind of all bootstrap for us. And I believe to do that, we need to go all definitions and then find one. See, static web apps. Everything is in here, all supported languages, which I believe there are a few. Then we don't do anything else, just reopen it in a container. Simple. Loving it so far. It probably will take a little while to bootstrap the container. So if anyone has any questions so far, try to. Oh, there's actually a lot. Are these questions or just statements of pretty much every single person is hiring in here? Ah, yes, dev containers are indeed so awesome. So what I'm hoping this is going to let us do is start with maybe a simple HTML file to kind of get things into development. But in the meantime, I'll probably just have to sit and wait. So yeah, if you do have anything to pop into the chat, please do. Are we actually in there? I think we're in. Okay, cool. Let's give it a go. So we'll go and maybe just start with something very, very simple, right? I believe this is how you bootstrap an HTML. And we don't really need to do anything, but maybe go h1, hello. And I'll just copy some code from my scratch pattern there, but literally all there is this nice span in here. So if we are lucky, and I'm hoping we are, all we need to do now is just run this thing. And the command line tooling for this, I'm not yet doing all the plumbing for VS Code to pick it up, but all you really need to do is run the command line tool that kind of emulates the environment. And I believe this is all you need to do. No. Let's start, of course. How could I forget? And the application is running, so just open up a port. What do we see? Yay! We're in there. Cool, awesome. So what did it take us? 5 minutes, including waiting for the container to spin up. So that's the time spans we're talking about here. These are the horizons that lets you really start producing something that you can use. And I'm just sticking with HTML. Obviously, you can use front-end frameworks such as React, Angular, and I believe the support actually comes on and on. So almost any modern framework is supported. Anyway, this is all nice, but obviously it doesn't do much. So shall we maybe create an API? And that would mean we'll have to bootstrap a function. Again, you could probably do it many ways. I'll just use command line because I find it a bit easier. So all it really does is creates a new function app that doesn't have much going for it at the moment. And I think we should probably also create the actual code, the function HTTP triggered thing. So I call it get name, but it probably can be anything at all, as long as it is an HTTP trigger, because we want an API, right? So in there, it adds a file. There's nothing special about it. I don't think we need much, apart from maybe we want to. So, and this is something interesting. I believe we can literally just move this thing into here and delete everything else. Don't need it. One thing that I find I kind of end up doing anyway is to do a manual restore and reopen the container just to ensure that all the extensions are installed and everything is bootstrapped. Your mileage might vary, but I'll just quickly do that. Shouldn't really take long. It is a small project. We're not installing any extra packages or anything like that. And I am again hoping that reopening it should not really take long either. Yes. So just to make sure that all the extensions are installed, especially these guys, because we need them to develop stuff, and that we can try and track where things are sitting. How's the progress? Nice. So running this combination is a bit more involved. Obviously, Static Web Apps expects you to point it to where the API is located, and that's what I'm going to do once OmniSharp installed. Yes, so it is basically the same command. We're just adding this API location in a folder, which is API. And I'm really hoping that this is all that we'll need to get this thing going.
Is it possible to increase the screen resolution so the wording is larger?
It is a very good question. How do I do that?
Control plus, I think, in VS Code.
Okay, I think things are changing now. Is it better?
Perfect. Thank you.
Ah, nice. Sorry for that. Yeah.
Many agree.
Cool. So apparently it is running. Let's open it up and see what's happening. I'm really hoping this is going to work. Okay, it does. So now, obviously, this is not very interesting. And I guess the thing we want is to actually see whether we can debug this one, maybe. And for that to happen, we need to go and try and call it. But the convention is very standard. Yes. So that's our API. Debugging doesn't seem to quite work, but we'll probably get to it later if we will. Now, let's try and put this all together. We kind of want our page to go and request things from the API. And the way I would do it, at least for the purposes of this demo, given that I don't know anything else but jQuery, I'll just do a fetch and I'll update this little thing. So to ensure that it is actually updated, we'll change it to something absolutely unacceptable. And we will basically just refresh the page. Oh. Yeah, I'm not sure if you actually see that, but it does flash this little "you cannot see me" and then fetches the result from an API. So that's really it if you want to do something very simple and small. But now let's say that you don't want to just leave it open for anyone to use, especially since functions are kind of pay per consumption. Let's try and add some security on top of it. And as I mentioned before, it is built in. So the way you do it is you create another file in here. Just hoping I can create a file. So that should have a very specific name. And that file basically controls everything in the application, starting with routing, default responses, redirects. And I believe, I'm not really going to go into that into too much detail, but I believe you can also assign your custom identity providers in here. So this is a very simple example. Basically, everything that is sitting under that API route, we only allow get methods, and it should have a role of a user that is authenticated. And we'll get to that in a second. I believe by default, every single user that's the system that kind of gets bootstrapped into this environment has a role called anonymous. But when you authenticate, you also get this role. So what that essentially means, you have to authenticate before you can go and access anything in here. Surely there are other better ways to protect your API endpoints, but if we want something quick and effective, that probably is our first starting point. So for this, we will need to restart things, because picking this file up is something that we need to do. And what I'm thinking is going to happen now, API management is expensive, isn't it? Yes. So as you can see, we've just pretty much got a whole 401 page interface. Less than ideal, but again, given how much code we wrote, it probably is a good result. And to kind of get it going from here, we need to somehow log in. And in the real thing, there's obviously going to be a way too. But what is a good thing for us is that this tool, this little app in here, emulates the authentication process as well. And there are well-known endpoints to do that. So I'll quickly pop one up in here. So it's auth, login, and then you actually get to choose from one of the supported providers. And I believe by default, there's Azure AD, GitHub, Facebook, maybe Twitter. But as I said, you can add your own, given that you don't use free version of Static Web Apps, which is actually available. So let's try go here. Is it going to work? Probably not. So let's go GitHub. Yep. So this is totally emulated, totally local screen that basically tells you that your chosen provider is GitHub. This is going to be your random user ID, and then you get to choose a name. So I'll choose a name. And these are the roles. As I said, anonymous you get by default. Don't need to do much for it. Authenticated is a different story. Let's add another one, although I'm not going to really do much with it. So you log in, you go back, and yay, you actually get the response button. We didn't have to do anything for it, did we? Now, suppose I am done using this thing and I want to log out. I believe this is all we have to do, and we're back to 401. Right. So that kind of concludes the local part of a demo. If anyone has any questions about what's been happening on screen so far, I'm happy to take it. So the question is, if the authentication login screen is for testing. Yes, this is a local screen that is effectively for you to test whether this particular stuff works or not for you. Actually, I believe, does it work with SSL? Yes, it does. At least when you deploy it to Azure, it definitely comes with its own SSL endpoint. I believe there's a bit of a trickery if you want to do own domains, because you can actually bring in your own domains to it. But I think it only supports like third level domains unless it's been fixed. And you need to do some tricks to make it like a second level domain. But that is doable as far as my research went. So maybe just quickly, let me slightly tweak the HTML so it looks a bit more readable, and then we'll just. Whether you could use Let's Encrypt. Do you mean on Azure or do you mean locally? I believe the certs that Azure provides you are signed by Microsoft. I'm not sure. So you actually don't need to do self-signed as far as my development experience goes.
You'll get the default wildcard cert of websites, Azure websites.
Cool. That's that. Yes. I'll just see if the code up with yesterday night was any good for demo purposes. You'll have to bear with me, I'm afraid. Yeah, doing Let's Encrypt for local is, I think, a bit of a pain. You can probably do like host file and maybe try to like trick the clients to think that you're actually on the same. No, wait a second. The protocol needs it to be publicly available DNS. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be easy. Documented steps. I've got a couple of blog posts of yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think I compiled the references page. but I could probably send something after the meeting if there's any appetite for that.
Timur, you could just put the link to your blog in the chat and then people could go from there.
Yeah, there's actually there's a couple of articles I've done on this topic. I've kind of grouped them together. Yeah, so if you just hold that thought until I actually can properly interact with the other screen here, I am hoping that we can do that. Right. So what am I seeing here and why? So maybe we don't need this one just yet because it seems to be preventing us from actually loading a proper page. No, wait a second. This is all correct because in here now, it doesn't know you. But as soon as we log in, which literally is just a link to send you here, and you see in here I actually coded Facebook because this is what I was testing for. And now it actually knows my name, so I can log out. And this is the flow, I guess, we're kind of expected to follow in here. Anyway, that's the local development part, which is all nice and cool, but I guess we all want to have a look at the real thing, right? I'll quickly start. I'll quickly start with ooh, this is strange. Yes, I'll quickly start by taking you through the environment that I've put together. And even though it does look like there's quite a few things happening in here, but I guess a few things to note are basically the resource itself. And as I said, I have a couple because I connected them to different Git repositories. And there's one that we might try and hack together later on. That's a challenge where I might need your help. This is your standard app insights for the built-in functions. So you can connect built-in functions to app insights. And the database that I was kind of playing with to actually see if I can get some entries saved and potentially get some real flow working. But we'll hopefully get to that. Key Vault, which apparently is the best practice to manage your secrets. And storage, yes. So this one I'll talk about a bit later. This might help us do our hacky deployment if we get to that. So these are all set up, but let's have a look at the UI setting one up if you wanted to. And this is where I think one claim that Microsoft makes on their website could potentially be put to test. No, why? Oh, that's because it's apps, isn't it? Right. So it's fairly standard, right? We can probably give it a name. Something like that. I'm actually not going to create it. So this is where you get to choose your plan type, and free is, well, free, while standards I think costs about $7 a month, but you get some nice perks like custom identity. You also get bring your own functions, so you're not really locked into these conventions. If you want to, maybe you have more triggers or more types of functions. Region, not everything is supported just yet. My favorite, Sydney, is not here. And then this is where things start to get interesting. So you get a choice to either use GitHub for your source repository, or you can choose other and just move on. But if you were to choose GitHub, and apparently this is what really is the way to go here, you get a nice button that lets you authenticate. Asks you for passwords, fine. So then you basically get to choose a repository that you like to use for this particular instance of a static web app, and a branch that you would consider a main production development branch. I've already done this, so I will not proceed. But what's going to happen next is it actually will go ahead and create this little workflow file in your repository. And I'm not a huge GitHub specialist, so I can't really walk you through too much of it. But my understanding is it either pushes things when you merge into the main branch, or it also supports a pull request flow where when you create a pull request, it actually spins up another environment in here. And this is what I was hoping to demonstrate. So what would be a good way to do that? Let's say I don't want this folder anymore. Actually, don't want the container. No. So I think I've got one. Oh, is that? Yes, so this is the same repository. I already checked it out. And let's say we want to change something, but we want to do it with a pull request flow. So I want to say, welcome to Postcard Exchange and testing PR flow, right? That I believe requires us to go and create a new branch. So I'll just call it feature test PR or something like that. Then you obviously commit stuff. So it's test PR. So I see a question about free cert for custom Apex domain. I am not sure. I think you don't get an Apex domain cert at all. It's all BYO, but I might be wrong if someone can pick that up. Would you like to stage? Well, yes, I would. And again, due to the way it's all set up, I'll probably have to use the actual terminal to kind of go and push. No, that's what I need to do. Right. So by this time, I'm hoping that GitHub would have picked up. Oh, yes. So it has picked up a new branch. And suppose now we want to create a pull request. And again, I'm just testing this stuff, right? So we go ahead and say create. And now something magical should happen. As you can see, the pipeline has kicked in. And this pipeline would actually go ahead and create a test environment in corresponding static web app resource. And I believe for us, this is going to be this one. So I'll just open up a URL. It should basically be a page like this. Nothing really special about it. Yep. But now, if we have a look at the environments in here, so I think from what I see in the chat, the most conversation kind of goes about the domains. So you can definitely do your own if you have set up the DNS. I think Shahid kind of has it, so yeah, I'll probably just move on to environments. So that's your main branch. That's where the production environment kind of hangs off. But then if you see here, there's staging. And this is where I'm expecting this thing to get deployed now. While it's building, there's also another thing that we probably want to kind of make a note of if we want to try and replicate the same flow with Azure DevOps. And this is where the build kicks in. Is it? Maybe this one. Probably just needs more time. All right, so I see the actual pipeline has run successfully. But what I was hoping to demo was the fact that it actually runs a Docker container to do the build as well as deployment. And the thing that we probably want to kind of take away from here is that the container is publicly available for anyone to use. I just don't see where it is. You'll probably have to trust me. Anyway, this is a nice message with a smiley face in here. And as you can see, it also does this URL that I'm hoping is actually an environment-based URL. So if we come here, we should see our staging environment that is tied up to a pull request. And it's probably hard to see, but like on the status bar, you see it actually links back to GitHub. So if you are using GitHub for this flow, you're pretty much set for life. You don't need to do anything at all. It's all nice and dandy, absolutely perfectly fine, seamless. But, well, let's open it. Let's see if there's anything different in here. So yeah, we've actually got our PR in here. So it's definitely working, right? This is what it was. This is what it is. And as you can see, there's a slight difference in the URL. So it's probably not very secure in the sense that you can always guess the ID. But if you want a seamless experience, GitHub is definitely the way to go. Now, suppose I don't really want this pull request. So is that a question, Shaheen?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
I just thought differentiated from all the other chat by prefixing.
Oh, right. Thanks. Yes, that is a very good question. So how does it actually, so my understanding is the question, how does it actually build single page applications? Is that what the question is? Front-end
That's
framework?
right. Yeah, they often have
Yes.
they often have some build steps or numerous build steps. So
Yes.
just be curious.
That is a very good question. And this is exactly what I was hoping to show in here. But given that we don't really have a front-end framework, I couldn't even find it. This is actually what it is. I think I just found it. So the whole build step, everything as far as I understand, the only way to build a static web app is by using a container that is supplied by Microsoft. And I'm just trying to find a name for this container. Having a bit of a trouble, but I believe it's literally a static web app client or something like that. Just can't find it. But what really takes care of all the build is this little tool in here. Again, I believe it's developed by Microsoft. It's called Oryx. And further up, this one. No, I think this one is checking it out. So it has to be in here, building. Yeah, I'm having a hard time navigating the logs. Under build.
I think it's there in the blue, but it looks like it's got a GUID because in Docker run commands, the last parameter is normally the Docker image. So it looks like it's a GUID for some reason.
Yeah, I would kind of expect it to be somewhere here because I know it fetches it from the container registry. And well, we'll actually talk about this container slightly after. I think we do have time. So I was going to touch upon that anyway. But so far, one thing to note is this little tool. And this tool is basically, from what I understand, looking at it, is a universal build container, universal build, what do you call it, script pipeline. So what it does, it detects a language and a framework that you kind of chuck at it, and it finds appropriate ways to build it. It's not, I believe it's not specific to static web apps, so you can use it yourself. And this is something we hopefully will use it. Yes. So it is used for functions and services. So it's not only front end, it also supports things like, I believe, Python. Maybe it supports Go. I think it's generator, detectors. So this is what it supports. And as you can see, it supports like static websites like Hugo. It supports Go. It supports .NET and Python, PHP, Node. And I'm guessing somewhere in the Node section, there will be a whole bunch of front-end frameworks. So this is how it builds stuff. It is fairly smart to know that if you stick it into a repository, if you give it a repository, I believe this is how it, so the question is, does Python with a pip install? Oh, I think it's—
Sorry, no, it's not a question. I'm stating.
Right. Yes, because I know it uses the Python dependency file, so actually understand that this is in fact a Python repository, but that's as far as I've gotten with it. I was actually playing with it a little bit. Anyway, I think I sidetracked. So it is using a smart tool that detects what you want to build, and this is how it builds the front-end websites as well as functions. Anyway, that's all in here. And where was I? I was deleting my pull request because I didn't want it. So if I just say close and I say delete branch, and then I believe another magical thing will happen and another action will kick in. Yes, so this is another action that's just kicked in. And what it is going to do, it is going to delete this environment from here. But now, as I said, GitHub is fantastic. You don't have to do anything at all. But if you go to the Azure DevOps version of it, which, if you remember from the create dialog, the only other option was other. And this is what it looks like. And the first thing that you notice, that this thing is actually grayed out. And as far as I'm aware, there's no way to get in. So that's as much as you get support for Azure DevOps. Yes, you can deploy it, and we will look at it now. But as far as I'm aware, there's no built-in way to support environments and PRs in this other type of setting. So we can push things into Azure DevOps. And one thing that you need to kind of get from here is this deployment token. So if I click it, it'll open up a dialog that has my deployment token. I just wouldn't click it. But what you need to do then, and this is all manual. So remember, GitHub was all done for you, while this is actually manual, right? So you go in here and you create a pipeline. I believe you can use a template for this pipeline, but effectively what it is a task that basically understands that this is an Azure Static Web App thing. It also needs to know where the static content and where the function sits, where you want to put it. I guess the default will work. And then this is the actual deployment token. Interesting thing about it, it doesn't need to connect back to the resource manager. So the only thing that you really need to deploy things to a static website, a static web app, is this token, which is quite interesting. But if you have a look at my service connections quickly, I actually don't have any. So this is an interesting thing. I'm not sure if this is the best kind of practice security or not, but it's something that later on kind of got me to think that we can probably circumvent this whole PR limitation of Azure DevOps that is not here. So if I do an update in here, I can actually do an update. So I've got this website. So yeah, this thing is already built. I know for a fact that it's disappeared. So this is the ADO version of the same website. And as you can see, it says ADO version. And you can log in. I'm actually using my GitHub credentials, so it would log me in. It would let me try and call the functions. It's just not much exciting, I suppose. I think at the moment it's not going to find anyone because no one else registered. Yes, that wouldn't really. But thing is, it knows who I am and it lets me communicate with the backend API. And if I wanted to, I could actually kick off another build in here. So I just wouldn't even, I wouldn't do much. I'll just update something saying, hey ADO, something like that. And I'll commit it straight to master because remember, we don't have PR flows or branches. And this is where it actually is a bit easier to see this whole container build pipeline, I think. It tends to be a bit more focused, I think. So if I go to pipelines, I'm hoping that this default pipeline kicked in. And what it basically does, it goes ahead and pulls the same container. Oh, yes, so this is the image. Oh, no. So that's the image I was talking about. You can literally pull it from the registry and use it as you please. And what it will do, it's basically going to have a look at what I've got in my repository, and it's going to figure out that these are only static HTML files. So it actually is going to warn me that there's nothing to build, and it will build the API and package them and upload them to, I believe they're called content servers or something like that in the client terminology of this particular tool. But yeah, see, it doesn't know what I have, so it'll just use them as static files. But otherwise, like detecting platforms in Oryx is actually a step where it looks at the repository and tries to figure out what it is. So yeah, it goes on to compile my API, and it goes on to zip it up and uploads to one of the, I believe they're called content servers. So then it obviously waits for the deployment to happen. And if we come back here, we could actually see that I think no, we wouldn't get any feedback because again, this thing doesn't support environments. But it looks like we are done. So if I refresh this now, I should actually see an ADO thing. So if you only want to ever deploy things using the main master branch, it's probably good enough to use ADO like that. It's fairly simple to set up. You saw the pipeline. It's very minimal. But then knowing that it actually is using containers kind of got me thinking if we can try and hack our way to maybe deploy from ADO but with environments. And the first thing that I tried to do is actually try to create another static web app in here, and I called it Hacky one. Is that? Yes, this one. But you see, for me to get that environment choice box in here, I actually had to create a GitHub version first and then kind of delete the GitHub repository. So then I still get to manage my deployment token, which I copied out and sort of used for my further deployments. I believe at the moment there's nothing deployed to this particular environment. Yes, see, it's waiting for deployment, so there's absolutely nothing. And potentially, this is going to be interesting. So I haven't tried this. I haven't tried this live. Actually, I haven't tried this at all. So I'll just use the same ADO source code that I've got, and I'll quickly magic up a command that I used for it. I'm hoping it's somewhere here. Yeah, you'll have to bear with me. So I think I'll just guess I'll still need my Visual Studio anyway. So we'll just quickly figure out the file and we'll try to run it. We don't need a container for this. And I'll just quickly create a file. I'll call it deploy. So that's what it should look like. It's not pretty, but this is basically what it is. And for this, I think I have got a couple of environment variables, which I think I called like so. So I think I already saved my tokens. And the only thing that we really need to know in here is that we define a branch and environment and a pull request title. So these are the bits that control the environments side of things. And this is the command that the normal build uses. So this container comes with the static sites client application, and technically nothing stops you from calling it however you like. Every single run of this client needs a deployment token, which is why I'm hoping that this is going to be sufficient. Just quickly gonna do that. It is SW hacky. Right. And hopefully that is really all that we need to get it to work. So this is PowerShell. Not good enough. So let's see if that actually deploys it without us going through any type of pipelines. No, it doesn't. Wonder why. Is it? I know why. Oh, that actually is a good point. Yes, it might well be that as well. Can I do it like? I think it's no. Oh, I believe this image kind of comes with a test test bash thing. So let's hope that maybe this one actually works. User password. So very secret. No, that works. No. Something is still missing. Can anyone spot what?
You were missing that slash. I think you've just put it back.
Okay. So I think this is, yeah, I think this is working now. So while we wait, I guess we can take more questions. So now I'm actually looking at the chat.
Timur, there was a question from just going.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't look at the chat.
From Murray. Murray asked, if you have multiple static web apps, can you share code APIs easily between them, and how would you do security?
That is a very interesting question. I feel that the only way you could do that is to do bring your own function, because I don't know. Well, I mean, you can probably rely on one set of APIs from another static front end, but then the course is not going to get done for you. I don't think by default they enable everything. It's probably just their own domain. So I suspect that the only way for you to really do that is going to be to set up your own function, do your own course, and then guessing do a custom identity provider. Potentially, I mean, you can get authenticated with, yes, it is a paid tier feature. Yes, absolutely. So you have to pay like $7 a month for the luxury. But that probably is the most straightforward way I can come up with on the spot.
Okay, and there's another question from Emmanuel at 12:57.
Well, he's actually jumping off now.
Yeah, sorry, I was just proposing a way to see where you can tweak the portal by checking the JSON definition. Okay, but might be a way. Might be not related to the Docker run, but
to the so did you just want to see the JSON definition of this?
Just go back to the top of the overview. Yeah, the JSON view there, top right.
I don't see it.
Yeah, top right. Just beyond.
This one.
Yes. Yeah, that one. So if you toggle to make sure you're on the latest API version.
I think
No, see, there's some more new. Tab 1.
Sure.
And yeah, it doesn't seem to show environments, does it?
Well, this one is actually the GitHub one, so it should have environments. Like this one is
has staging environment policy enabled. You see, so maybe that's one way of doing that through through ARM, is try to push an AZ REST or something like that to enable.
Let's have a look at the other one. That actually is a good point. I didn't even know that I could find it in there.
Well, that's resources.azure.com is outdated now, so that JSON view is the best way for you to see the latest version of all the APIs.
Interestingly enough, I don't think it is what toggles it, because this is the ADO version, and
yeah,
it's not here. I kind of think that this is a UI thing that they specifically locked it because, well, it's
but
not
normally the
to.
UI is driven by this. That's why I was checking. Okay, maybe. Okay,
so
don't know.
I guess the only way for you to hack it would be to literally create a GitHub account and GitHub's instance, and then just nuke the GitHub and kind of replace it with ADO.
Okay.
Hopefully the build is done. No, it didn't.
Okay.
Oh, deployment token is not provided.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Right. Why was it not provided? Can it be because I didn't like? I know why. That's probably because it actually was the sudo thing. I'm assuming that it's the environment that I didn't really export it into. So maybe let's try again. I'll just copy it out. I don't care. You can use it, guys. until I nuke it, you can use it. Yep. So this thing didn't quite work. So what we'll do is we'll just do that, and I'm guessing.
I don't think you need to sudo it. I think the error was different.
Something else.
Yeah.
Well, let's try that, because I know sometimes some distros require you to do a sudo, but some don't. So we'll see it soon enough. Yeah, it seems like it's just worked. Nice. While it's building, I'll probably talk you through the changes to ADO that you need to make to hopefully get it to support this PR flow. And the way, well, it's probably not the only way, but the one I sort of settled on was to actually make a branch policy that would kick in that container build when you check something into a branch. And I believe the branch policy is in here. So I've got this deploy to test, which I disabled, but basically what it is, it runs another pipeline that I called SWA deploy. And I believe it should only run when we create a branch. Yes, so I'll just leave it be. So when this thing runs, that is obviously going to deploy another environment into here. Well, into here. Where's that one? So into here. And I kind of feel that this can be improved upon, because what I found is the titles and branch names are not really that consistent. Probably because the policy doesn't have enough inputs, because I think this is what I found, that it's quite lacking on inputs that I can use, say, for PR title or something like that. So what I anyway had to do was to actually set up a service hook to run on completion of a pull request. And this is what I think we probably should do for the initiation of it as well. But basically, this is a webhook to run a function. Oh, look at us. We've actually run the function 2 times. So this is literally just a way to run that Azure function that I was kind of hinting at before. And if I open it up, you'll see that the event in my case is pull request merge is attempted, and I only run it when it is successful. Probably don't really need to see anything of here. But yeah, that's basically me running this little staging cleanup function with a function key. And if I go to that function, you'll see something very magical and very Inception-like, because ultimately what it does, and I opted for the simplest like C# script function, so I didn't really go too far out with it. But what it ultimately does, it actually triggers another pipeline on the ADO, so it kind of goes back to itself. I think I had a picture somewhere. I'm not sure if actually. No, I think I didn't have a picture, but this is basically what happens. So your ADO kicks off a function that runs another pipeline when something happens. So it's just using an API with a particular pipeline ID in your organization project. And when that runs, it kind of comes back to the ADO again, and it runs another Docker command, which basically does cleanup. And the cleanup is this tear down, which is literally just running close. So that is the same command that GitHub is doing, but you have to invoke it yourself. And that's pretty much all I had to do with this. If anyone has more questions, I'm happy to take them. If not, I guess that's been quite a long live hacking session, which didn't go as well as I wanted it to.
Are there any other questions? Otherwise, we can wrap it up. Well, thank you. There was a question from David.
Yes. So it would pay to move my simple website, that is an app service in an app service plan, to Azure Static Web Apps. That really depends, I guess, because in here you have $7 or so like base fee, but then you actually pay for consumption. I don't know if like your website at the moment incurs any charges, so it's probably something that you need to decide whether it's actually going to make sense. Like the whole setup is more of a package as I see it, and it kind of lets you get started with things real quick. As you saw, it took us maybe 10 minutes to produce something, and like if we check it in, it's going to be there in like less than an hour. But if you already have something, I don't know if you really need to kind of go and try to fit yourself into that same set of assumptions that it kind of forces you into.
Yeah, I actually quite like the between the two, where I see what you've just done. Maybe when I want to change my website, is actually do it in the container and do all the tests without having to break my one. But if it's going to work in the container well, then maybe you do change over to the container.
Sure. There was another question. Anyone done any cost comparisons between this and the CDN blob? Yeah, I'm not sure if I can answer that. I haven't really done any cost comparisons to anything at all. I'm just using free versions. I'm cheap. Yes. So if you stay within like low limits of consumption, and if you're happy to use free tier of this resource, I think you don't really have to pay anything.
There's a question from Murray around scale out and scaling up with static web apps.
It is a very interesting question. I am assuming that since these are functions, they would scale out without you having to do much. I'm not sure what tier they are, the consumption. Haven't really looked into how the function side of things works. Because I don't believe you get to choose, like not with the built-in functions. Because remember, you can always BYO, right? And then you can do whatever you like. You can can define your own like triggers, your own scaling rules, and your own like app service plans. But with this, I think you are basically locked into whatever is in here. Well, you've got hosting plan, but that's just free and standard. And I think it doesn't say much about scale out.
Yeah, you'd have to assume it's consumption because they don't actually expose the functions resource directly in the portal, do they? So
No, they don't. Not that I can see anyway. Yeah, I think the only way for you to manage it yourself was pretty much going to be DIY. But by then you maybe don't even need this. I kind of see this as an ideal tool to actually start out. And then once you grow, you can probably kind of progress it towards paid hosting plan of the same static web apps. And then once you kind of outgrow that, you just go and do a custom like app service and functions. And well, maybe keep hosting the front end, the static assets in here. But yeah, kind of see that this is where it's intended to, but I'm not entirely sure if this is what Microsoft wants us to do. Because from my experience with the DevOps side of things, I kind of see that there's definitely a slight advantage of going GitHub versus ADO, and this is where I'm not really going into any conspiracy theories, but I kind of feel that maybe Microsoft wants us to start using GitHub a bit more. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yes. Anyway, that's probably all I have for today.
Well,
Thanks
Timur,
everyone for.
Thank you very, very much for a very informative session. And once again, if anyone else would like to come and present to us, we'd love to hear from you. Anyone who asked a question and anyone who made a comment or shared a link, please feel free to send me a link to an email to the address that I've just put there, and I'll send you a free Azure pass. Once again, thanks very much, Timur, and goodbye.
Thank you for having me. Cool. Cheers, everyone.